on Mondays comes with our former colleague from KGO Radio. He is a political ninja and indeed the political analyst for the CBS stations across California and beyond and across the iHeart Radio network. How about it for the great Gary Dietrich, everyone? Hello, sir.
Hey, good morning, Mark. And another Monday when nothing is happening in Washington, right? I mean, it's just, you can't, I mean, this is, hey, everybody's just finally digesting their turkey. All of a sudden, kaboom, this.
Oh.
You know, I gotta say at the outset, you have to have compassion for Joe Biden when hubby drops this before he jumps on a plane to Africa for 3 days. He's out of the country. And she's sitting there trying to help little kids, and people are yelling at her about Hunter Biden. I mean, you know, there's never good timing in politics, but you got to have some compassion on the First Lady today.
I couldn't agree more. That was an awfully tough spot. It was. I would have come in and just said, "Hey, when I point to you guys in the band, you start playing, okay? I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear the press corps." Hey, I was just riffing a little bit on the pardon thing. You can speak to that, and then I want to move on because I think there's other very big stuff happening, like what's happening at the FBI, and I'll get to that. But give me your thoughts. This, in a way, feels as though it was a day that we all knew was coming.
Yeah, I think there was, was it going to come? Yes. Would it have been easier if it came, somehow in a re-election, and the band's playing and, oh, yeah, well, we're going to do this, but we're moving on. I mean, this is a tough spot. It's not only a tough spot for the current occupant of the White House, because this is going to have, as controversial pardons do, you don't really want the kitchen door slamming you in the backside on the way out. And this is going to do that. There's no way around it. I think the most challenging part right now is for sitting Democrats in Congress. You've heard, I'm sure, Mark, from the sitting governor of Colorado, who's spoken out against this, said president should not have done this. I think the problem becomes, I heard you in the lead-in, you and Kim were talking about kind of drawing a clear line between them, and us for Democrats up till now. I don't think there's any way around this, Mark, but it really blurs that. And I think that's what Democrats are concerned about now in Washington and outside of Washington is, look, how are we going to prosecute the case in the public arena and in the political arena against Trump and whatever, shenanigans they think he's going to pull or going to pull, might pull with this sitting out there now. I think that's the challenge politically for Democrats, which is why I think you have and are going to hear people who said, look, Joe, we had a feeling you might do this, but how come you and from the, White House briefing room stuff kept making a point that you would never, ever do this, and then you did? Why not just say, well, it's under consideration, or, we've got to see how the facts. But it was so unequivocal, Mark, the denials in advance, that it makes this, I think, have added import that it would not have otherwise.
I think that's such a great point. You could have easily characterized this as something that I certainly hope I won't have to consider this, but whatever. You can, especially as a politician as skilled as Joe Biden, there are a million ways to play it off. You don't have to answer the question. But as I was saying, he was trying to maintain a party line for a reason. He's trying to say, look, we don't play like they do. We respect the rule of law, but then again, in the end, we also respect the obligation we have to family, I guess. And, so speaking of the rule of law, it is typical that the FBI head is the FBI head for a 10-year term. And it is being virtually ignored by, as I was saying, even the New York Times. They just say, I don't remember the exact headline, but something along the lines of, Trump taps Kash Patel for FBI. Like, you're just replacing the new coaching staff like you would because you're the new head coach. That's not the way Washington typically works. So he's flushing a guy that he actually appointed, Trump again, in Gray. Isn't it Gray, his last name? Sorry. It was just I'm on jet lag, so my mind is slow today. But he is replacing him with a guy, Kash Patel, who has spoken quite openly about essentially dismantling this agency. I mean, closing down big parts of the FBI. Can you speak to this entire thing? First, the custom, the institution of letting an FBI director remain in place, and then the appointment, at least the nomination of Patel.
Well, first of all, you can certainly be forgiven for jet lag over the most difficult transportation period of the year, Washington or whatever, East Coast and Thanksgiving. I've done that. Believe me, that's a nightmare. And by the way, it's Ray, not Gray.
Ray, sorry,
Nobody,
not Gray. Yeah.
nobody really cares. But the point of the matter is, this is one of those rock and a hard place kind of things, uh, Mark. And here's why: because it is not uncommon for even appointees who have set terms, when a new administration comes in, to at least offer, their resignation, or offer, hey, listen, if you'd like me to stay on, I will, but if you don't, I understand. That's not uncommon. You see that in a lot of positions. There's been a little dust up recently with the Fed chairmanship, saying, I'm not going to step down even if Trump wants me to. I have a set term. So, but it's not uncommon for people to offer that up. Why this has gotten a lot more attention is because the nature of Trump's new nominee is pretty controversial, to say the least. And were it just sort of like a changing of the old guard, it wouldn't be getting this kind of attention. But, it's now ranking right up there, perhaps not quite at, Matt Gaetz level, but it's pretty significant in terms of people raising their eyebrows about this. And again, we're going to see where this goes. I mean, I really think, and now we've got, of course, Hegseth. I don't know if you want to get into that today, but, this email from Hegseth's mom years ago, and, all the womanizing allegations, et cetera. So, again, this stuff's going to play out. We're still 2 months from an inauguration day, basically, where this is going to become official. But I think there's going to be some comings and goings, even with the nominees, before they set foot in a Senate hearing. We'll see where this one goes.
And look, I want to just say this on the FBI thing, and then I wouldn't mind a quick word about Hegseth. I think we'll have time to talk about him probably in your, on future Mondays. But how many future Mondays he may have I'd be curious to know your take on that. But look, the FBI has a troubled history. The FBI has a history, for example, under J. Edgar Hoover, of being weaponized, of going after luminaries, civil rights leaders, Martin Luther King. It's been documented now, chapter and verse, literally, about what the FBI did to him, surveilled him, and really tried to destroy him. And they tried to do that with many people who were viewed as sort of enemies of the state. So the FBI's troubled history is one that one can point to and say, hey, the FBI needs to be dry cleaned of a lot of the bad stuff that's going on there. But Kash Patel has never even been an FBI agent. He has no respect from that institution, which has been revered alongside when it comes to counterterrorism and a lot of the work that the FBI has done, drug interdiction, this sort of thing. They're revered even as they live with that troubled history to which I've referred. So I'm wondering, on what level there'll be a tolerance for this kind of really out of left field nomination like Kash Patel?
Well, I think part of it twofold. First off, let me say this. You can pick real high profile names like J. Edgar Hoover, who, both of the Kennedy brothers, RFK as Attorney General and JFK, really had some concerns about. And there's been all kinds of things over the years written about whether J. Edgar Hoover even had something to do with the demise of the Kennedys. I mean, that's way out there. But I'm just simply saying, you're right, Mark. The FBI has been under the microscope a lot in many situations over many years. I think the larger concern I would get to about it institutionally, and then I'll switch to, this particular nominee, is, it's to me part of the sad degradation of institutional trust in our nation's capital. That we cannot abide as a society decade after decade, whether it be SCOTUS, the Supreme Court, whether it be the FBI, all of our institutions of governance. Look, folks, they are important, right? I mean, there's no getting around that. That is how a democracy, that is how a republic, that is how a society functions well. You have to have some institutional integrity. And that's my larger concern, Mark, about this, other nominees, and our institutions in Washington, is simply this, that all the polls show a declining societal, cultural belief in the integrity of these institutions. That, I think, we need to step back from, regardless of your politics, and say that's a concern. As far as this nominee goes and whether he's going to survive the nomination process, I think one of the interesting things about this, Mark, is it's sort of like if you line up 10 questionable figures, does it make it easy for each individual one to kind of slip their way through the cracks. Does that make sense? And I think that may be something very interesting for us to talk about and watch over the next couple of months. Whether it's doesn't matter. Tulsi Gabbard, this guy for Kash Patel. I mean, there's just a whole host of them. How many of these battles can you fight simultaneously? I guess is my point.
That's really the question that we were asking. I think you and I might have touched on it last time, which is, A, most presidents get most of the people they want in most of the positions to which they've been nominated. That's just a fact of history. Number two is really your point, which is, okay, you put up this murderer's row, in my view, of incompetence and of political terrorists is really what I think a lot of these people are. They're there to dismantle the very agencies that they're supposed to be running. And how many of them can you knock down? By pure numbers alone, which is kind of what you're saying, it seems like a couple of them are going to get into the outfield on you. Who will they be? Will it be Pete Hegseth or will it be Kash Patel? So I think you make a really good point. This is where process meets the lunacy, and this is my view, not yours. The lunacy and the rebellion of the Donald Trump administration, which is informed by a lot of things from Steve Bannon to who's on TV and looks good. I really think there's a lot that goes into this process. Let me go to Pete Hegseth for a moment, because the handicapping of the Pete Hegseth appointment has sort of become a little side hustle job that everybody's kind of working this holiday season. So he is President-elect Trump's pick to lead the Department of Defense. We've talked about the fact that this is an immense organization. He is someone who did serve in the military, but he's never been in an administrative position. And you have a management of over 2 million people, somewhere between 2 and 3 million people. That's just personnel across the globe. Now it comes out that he was pushed out as the head of 2 veterans advocacy organizations because there were internal allegations of mismanagement and personal misconduct. This is a whistleblower report. And I'm wondering if Hegseth takes on a little water, given the fact, now, again, he was repeatedly intoxicated at work events and gatherings with staff, sexually pursued female staffers. This is all in this whistleblower report. So it's kind of what we'd heard, but there are now more specifics. If Hegseth, that handsome weekend Fox News host that Donald Trump's fallen in love with, even though he's had no real managerial experience, if he takes on a little water, might he be close enough to the edge that he is the first one to topple over?
Well, yeah, I think, I was alluding to this a couple minutes ago, Mark. I think some of this is going to be Matt Gaetz. I mean, we're coming up with a new term here again, right? What I mean is there's sort of going to be a winnowing process before they ever see the light of a senatorial chamber. You know what I mean? A hearing room.
Yeah.
I really think this is some of it. Now, whether it's strategic and, on the part of the Trump transition team or not, it's just happening. I mean, there's no getting around it. In other words, the vetting process that you would normally see happening when senators are questioning these people is happening in the public arena before it ever hits their desks. So, I mean, are some of these folks likely to fall before they ever get into a Senate hearing room? I think that's probably true. I think, as I talked about before, that Trump's patience for, and how much capital does he want to spend on an individual nominee vis-a-vis major policy priorities that he's got on things like immigration, on the economy, on foreign policy. I think that's a calculus that we're going to see continue to play out. And the thing about Hegseth or anybody else is going to be, Trump's tolerance for, really going to the mat for some of these folks we've seen so far is not very high. And I just think that's likely to continue. I think that's just the reality of it. The only other thing I would say is that traditionally, and who knows whether tradition's been thrown out of the window of the Senate or not, traditionally what's happened is that individual senators with long-term policy chops in a particular area, say somebody who's been on the Defense Committee for a long time, or somebody, who's been part of the, Judiciary Committee. I mean, Joe Biden played this role in going after Supreme Court justice nominees. They typically, those senators with long-standing influence in a particular policy area have been given a lot of latitude, a lot of deference, and a lot of respect. If they come after a nominee in their area of expertise, that usually is not a good sign. So let's see what happens. Let's see what happens with some of these people on the defense area, both Republicans and Democrats, when it comes to Hegseth.
That's such a great take. The notion that there is a limit to sort of the reputational damage that Trump will allow to continue. I think that's a brilliant take. And so a lot of the traditional airing of this sort of thing, questions, in other words, about a nominee, that's going on pre-confirmation process. I think that's such a great take. Thank you, Gary. All right, I don't have another minute with you. I just want to ask you about what's happening. This is pure politics with Jamie Raskin and him going after the top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee. That's Gerald Nadler from New York. What's happening with that?
I think this is simply the aftermath of November 5th. I mean, had Democrats succeeded, right? Maybe they retook control of the House or, and certainly the White House. I don't think you'd see the changing of the guard being demanded and being undertaken, some of these palace coups within these committees, which traditionally have been very seniority focused. But I think there is a restlessness inside the Democratic Party writ large, no question about it. And people are saying, look, kids, things have got to change. And interestingly, somebody who's not short in the tooth herself, Nancy Pelosi, is actually apparently fostering some of this, saying, yeah, it's time for some of this old guard to go because we have got to get retooled for 2026.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, this is going to be a fascinating period in our history. It's not all fascinating good, but it is all fascinating. You can find Gary across the iHeartRadio network and also on the CBS television stations, and he's so great to come in on the finish to the holiday weekend here on this Monday and every Monday on the show. Gary, so appreciate you. Thank you, my friend.
You too, buddy.
Okay, Gary Dietrich, everybody. And I should mention, Gary is actually brought to us each week by Bill Campbell at RE/MAX Gold. If you're relocating into or from Northern California particularly, you need a highly respected real estate professional, and Bill Campbell is that real estate professional. Reach him at RE/MAX Gold, and you can text him directly, 530-448-7474. 530-448-7474. Bill Campbell from RE/MAX Gold. Thank you for bringing us Gary Dietrich. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.